to show you how to make a security quilt using the Sweet Dreams quilt blocks from Kreative Kiwi. For this I'm going to be using a 5x7 hoop, some no-show mesh, a water erasable pen, my squizzers, masking tape, some pins. I'm going to be using 2 colours with matching bobbin, a straight edge, I've just got a piece of cardboard here, and my fabrics and batting cut to size. I'm going to show you how to make 2 blocks from the set, the first one being the plain X block. The second one is going to be the flower applique block, and from those you're going to be able to make any in the set. I'm going to show you how to do the X block first, so load that file into your machine along with the matching bobbin and thread for the colour that you want for the X quilting on it. So you're going to start off by hooping your stabiliser. So place your layer of no-show mesh over the hoop and then insert the inside frame. We're going to pin around the edge of our hoop to stop the stabiliser from being pulled down between the 2 parts. So take your pin, any pin with a head will work, place it on top of the inside hoop, push it through your stabiliser, bring it back round and through your stabiliser again, and that will anchor it. And then you're going to stitch round number 1, which will give you your placing outline. I will be repeating round number 1 twice so that it will enable me to trim up my batting before adding the fabric, because that will make piecing it together later on a lot easier. I've just slipped a piece of paper under my hoop here just so that you can see the outline. You're now going to place your batting over the outline and tape it in place. I'm going to show you how to skip through the colour stops on my machine. Mine's a Brothread V3. Yours might be completely different. You'd have to refer to your user manual, but from what I can make out, quite a lot of the machines use the same icons, so yours might be in a different place, but the chances are it will use the same icons for this. So first off, I've got a needle with a plus and a minus there. I'm going to press that, and that brings this screen up, and this is for skipping back and forth through the stitches. That's with the needle for the plus and the minus of the needles there. And then I've got 2 cotton reels here, one with a plus and one with a minus, and that will skip through the colours, plus going forwards of course and minus going backwards. And I want to go back to colour 1, so I press the minus. Then I'm going to press the needle with the plus 1, and that will line up to the first stitch. So now when I load my hoop into my machine, it's going to stitch round number 1 again as before. So I've loaded my hoop into my machine and I'm going to stitch round number 1 again. We're now going to trim up the excess batting from around the stitch line. Now going to take your straight edge and your marker pen, and we want to do a cross right in the middle, both back and front. So take your straight edge and line it up corner to corner, and then draw a line. Now you're going to do the same on the other diagonal. and the same on the back of your hoop. And you're going to be using those to align your fabrics really accurately, because the most important thing with doing this raggy quilt is to have all the sides trimmed to exactly the same size. So once you've got your cross, take your fabric and with the front facing up, you're going to fold it on the diagonal so that your corners form a perfect fold right to the tip. And then you do the same on the other side. Not worried about this corner for now. Then take your 2 points and put them together. So that you've got a triangle. Take your hoop, place the point of your triangle in the middle, and you're going to line this line up here, this edge of your fabric up with this line here, and this one with this line here. I'm probably going to have to realign this afterwards because I can't see what I'm doing, but you'll get the idea. And once you've done that, open it out. And your fabric should be nice and straight and central to the batting. So then you're going to tape it in place. You're going to do exactly the same for the back. So turn your hoop over. And once more with the right side of your fabric facing up, fold it in half on the diagonal and then in half again with the 2 tips lining up. And take your hoop, place the point to the middle, and this line should line up with, this edge should line up with this line, and this edge with this line. It does. Unfold it, take it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2. And that's our first block finished, so we can remove that from the hoop. And we'll be trimming that up in a little while. We can now put that aside. I've loaded the file flower applique into my machine. I'm staying with the pink bobbin and thread for now. You're going to hoop your layer of no-show mesh and pin it around the edge of the hoop as we did for the first hooping. This block is going to be constructed in a very similar way, and we're going to repeat a lot of the steps in it. So when you're ready, load your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 1, and that's going to give you a placement outline. Once again, I've put a piece of paper underneath my hoop so that you can see my outline. Before I go any further, I'm going to go back through the colour stop to colour 1 again, exactly the same way as I did in the first hooping, so that my machine's ready to stitch round number 1 once again. Okay, that's now set. You're now going to place your batting over the outline and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 1 again. Trim up the excess batting from around the edge of the stitch line. Move this to the side for a second. We're not going to add the backing fabric straight away as we did for the first one. We're going to add that afterwards a bit further on. But once again, take your fabric face up, fold it in half on the diagonal, making sure that the points are nice and sharp, and then fold that in half so that they line up. I'm just going to pop a pin in that for a minute just to hold it. Right, first off, what we should have done is done our cross on the front and back of our hoop. So I'm going to start off on the back. So we can now add our front fabric. So once more, the point to the centre of the cross, this edge lined up with that line, and this edge lined up with this line. And then unfold it, taking care not to move it, tape it in place. You're now going to stitch round number 2, and that's going to secure your fabric in place. Stitch round number 3, and that's going to give you your placement outline for the fabric for your flower. Place your fabric for your flower over the outline and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 4 to secure it. I'm not going to have a separate colour for the centre of my flower, but I'm going to place a piece of fabric the same colour so that you can see what you need to do. So place your centre flower fabric over the centre of the petals, and then you're going to tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 5 to secure it. You're now going to trim up the excess fabric from around the centre of your flower and from around the petals. Load your thread for the satin stitching around the edge of your flower into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 6, and that's going to zigzag all the raw edges. Making sure that you've got your thread colour for the satin stitch in your machine, you're now going to stitch round number 7. Load your thread colour for the satin stitch around the centre of the flower into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 8. Load your thread colour for the quilting around the flower into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 9. We're now going to add the backing, So let's move that aside for a minute. Take your backing fabric and, as before, fold it in half on the diagonal. Nice sharp points on your corners, and then place them together. Turn your hoop over, tip to the middle, this edge along this line and this edge along this line, and then unfold it and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 10. Make sure that you've got a matching bobbin and thread loaded into your machine for the decorative border that's going to come after securing the backing. You're now going to stitch round number 11, and that's going to do the decorative border around the block. The next job is trimming up all your blocks, and you want to cut them all to exactly the same size. I'm going to trim all my blocks to 2 centimetres. And you're going to measure from the very edge of the stitch line there. I'll turn this round. So line that up on the edge. And then cut. You're going to do exactly the same with all your quilt blocks. Once you've trimmed all your blocks to size, you're then going to start piecing them together. So lay them out and decide where you want each block first, and take a photo of it, because if you've got a lot of blocks, it's a lot to remember. Luckily I've only got 9, so it's easy. And then we're going to put each block back to back so that the right sides are facing, or should I say the fronts are facing outwards. And then I'm going to clip them together, but you can clip or pin, it's entirely up to you. And you want them to be as accurate as possible. So that's the first one attached. Now we'll do the next one. Once all your rows are pinned up, we're then going to stitch them. You're going to leave yourself a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance from the edge of the stitch line here. If you're not very good at stitching a straight row, you can draw a line in with a chalk pen and then just follow that. Or if you've got a 1/4 inch foot, just put it up against the edge of the stitching and follow that. And that's what we're going to do next. I've just marked on some lines where my foot is going to sit up against, so that I get a nice straight 1/4 inch seam line all the way down. And I've done that on both parts of my blocks. And we're now going to stitch these together. And that's our row completed. You're going to do exactly the same on your other rows, and then we're going to pin, or should I say clip or pin, the two rows together to join the two panels. I've marked my stitch guidelines onto my row. On the edges here I've just placed my card on the inside stitch line here, because when I put my foot up against there, it gives me a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I lined it up with the bottom there, drew a line on, then did the same this side. So now that is ready to add to this panel, and as you did with these pieces, we're going to do exactly the same with these. So they're going to be back to back, and edge to edge. So I've just got the tuck that under there for a minute. So I'm lining up my corners of my blocks. And I'm adding a clip. And these seam lines here, I want them to be married up as well, along with the edges. And I'm just going to put the raggy edge pieces to the right for the minute. And I'll explain why in a second, once I've got it all clipped up. And this one is going to go to the left. And making sure that my seams marry up. Okay, so when I stitch this, I'm going to stitch these two cream panels first, then I will turn my quilt over and I will stitch the middle one from the back, and I'm going to stitch from here up to the join stitch line here, and then I will stop, come over to here, starting from the join stitch line here and finishing here. Then I will turn over, I will pull these back, so that the raggy seams are all facing one way. And then I will be stitching from this side, and I'm just going to put my last marker on here for when I stitch from this side. And the reason being is I've got pink thread on top of my machine, and my bobbin is, no, it's the other way around. I've got cream thread on top of my machine and I've got pink in my bobbin, so I don't want pink showing on the cream and vice versa. It takes no extra time to do this, and it will give you a nice neat finish. So let's get on and stitch these. Maybe stopping just here. Now I'm going to take up again here on right on this stitch line. Now I'm going to turn my quilt over and pull these back. And now I'm going to stitch from this stitch line here down to this stitch line here. that's our rows joined nice and neatly. And you're going to do exactly the same with the rest of your rows. The last job for you to do once you've got all your rows joined is to trim and make the edges raggy, and that's what I'm going to do next. I've done most of it because I'm sure you don't want to sit here watching me cut hundreds of little snips into a piece of fabric. So I'm going to start with the edge, and you're just going to go around and just trim. Don't cut your stitching, of course, every 1/4 of an inch thereabouts. And in between the rows here, and then when they're all trimmed up, you can just fluff them up, give them a good scratch. And then you're going to pop it into your washing machine and wash it, and then that will set all the edges so that they become all raggy. I hope you enjoyed this stitch along. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified of new videos as soon as they're published. Do pop along to Kreative Kiwi's Facebook group. There's always lots of help, ideas and inspiration there for everybody. And thank you very much for joining me. You'll find a link to this design in the video description below, along with lots of other helpful information such as where I get my supplies and some discount codes for you as well.